Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the Crisis on Infinite Earths Companion Set, Volumes 1 through 3, brought to us by DC Comics. Now, this set has had a staggered release. The first couple volumes have already been out, and the third volume, right here, is the latest release. And that completes the set. Now, why DC did not choose to do an omnibus on this series, I have no idea. I wish they had, and I wish they'd done it a little differently, but for whatever reasons that are known only to them, this is the way we have it. What this is the Crisis on Infinite Earths tie-in issues for the original 12-issue limited series that was published in 1985. Now, at the time, DC was having a problem. Their characters and their history had become so convoluted and confusing that a lot of newer readers just didn't know what to make of it. If you had not been keeping up with DC Comics history, there were so many characters to keep track of, so many characters that were the same characters but different variations of the same characters, that it was all very confusing. The writers and artists had explained this away by creating multiple Earths, or infinite Earths, as it says on the title, to explain away the lives of all these different characters. Sometimes they would even interact with each other. But as this grew over time, so did the confusion. So this was an effort by DC to streamline their titles and their characters and their worlds into one single DC universe, one single Earth instead of multiple Earths, and it gave them a chance to ditch some characters which they really didn't want to deal with anymore, and make it simpler for readers to understand. So, the first thing you need is the Crisis on Infinite Earths series, and you can collect that in the regular single issues or in a trade paperback, or as I've got here, I've got the Absolute Edition, which is very nice. As you can tell, it's nice oversized artwork. I really like this. This is my preferred method of collecting this series. I was around for this series. It was a big deal. It was a big event. I enjoyed trying to figure out all the characters, who was whom, trying to name all the characters, because they had characters from all over DC history, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Now, it is a little dense. If someone were to read DC Comics for the first time, this is not where I would start them at. Because quite honestly, I think this would confuse them even more so and would not be helpful. But if you're already a fan of DC, and you know a lot of these characters, you know a lot of the situations, this is an excellent volume to have and to read. And as you can see, the Absolute Edition does not have much in the way of extras, but this is my preferred way of having it. Anyway, to read this series, you're going to need this. If you want to read it in proper reading order. And this comes to the problem that I have with this series. Yes, it collects the tie-ins. Actually, it collects most of them, as I'll show you. It doesn't collect every single issue that was connected to the Crisis on Infinite Earth series. It's just the major ones that had some kind of storyline or conflict that was related to the main series. So here we have Volume 1. Here's Volume 2 with the new Teen Titans. And here's Volume 3. Now, this is not an oversized hardcover. This is just a regular size hardcover. And Volume 1 takes place, again, this has all happened during 1985, so this is all through the months of 1985 and a little bit into 1986. It's basically the comics. There isn't really much in the way of extras. The only extra that they have, and this brings me to my concern, it has this timeline. This timeline enables you to read the Crisis series and the tie-in issues in chronological order, which sounds great, but that's not the way that these books were published. So if you want to read this in chronological order, starting with Crisis on Infinite Earths number 1 and working your way down the issues, these books don't follow that order. So you're going to be jumping around from book to book to book, plus your Crisis series book. So that's a little unfortunate. That's why I wish they had done an omnibus and had these tie-ins in proper reading order and not just this handy map that was nice to look at and go, oh yeah, that's cool, but boy, I wish my books were in that order. I mean, some of these books aren't even in the timeline. This very first issue in Volume 1, for example, DC Comics Presents number 78, Superman, Forgotten Villains. It's not even in this. I don't know where it places in the timeline. There are other issues, for example, Batman 389, Detective Comics 556, Batman 390. Issues like this, which the description of the contents, there's description of the contents of each issue by the picture, but some of them, like these last three I just read, just say red skies, red skies, red skies. So the only connecting tissue, if you will, between those issues here and the main Crisis series was that the red skies that were going on in the Crisis series at the time are present in the skies on these issues during their stories. But other than that, there's no actual storyline tie-in. So if you go through this timeline, you'll realize that not every issue on this timeline is in these books. Here's another one, Vigilante number 22, Red Skies. That's not in there. It makes it for kind of difficult reading. Now, the artwork is what you would expect from the 1980s. It's very typical of the era. Roy Thomas did some of these, Marv Wolfman. I'm not ungrateful to have these issues. I honestly don't remember a lot of them from when I was a kid collecting these comics. I think that was due to budgetary reasons. I could collect the monthly issues, but all these tie-ins were on a kid's budget, were out of my price range. So I'm actually happy to have these issues collected in a hardcover format. I just wish that DC had gone about it differently. It would have been nice if they had put together an omnibus and put all this together in a chronological reading order like the timeline shows. And you know what? If they wanted to throw in the Crisis series in there and make it one of those big omnibuses that they sometimes make, that would have been fine too. I know that would have been double dipping for some people, including myself, but it would have been nice, actually. Now, these books are very simple. There's nothing on the hardcover. It's just an imprint that you can feel of Crisis on Infinite Earths. There's nothing on the spine other than Crisis, Companion, and the volume. It's called a deluxe edition. That's what they're calling these, a deluxe edition. But there isn't a whole lot to it. They retail for $75 a piece, but as always, I do not recommend that you pay full retail price for these. You can go online to places like Amazon and In-Stock Trades and get these quite a bit cheaper. So if you're interested in these, that's the route I would go. I don't like to pay full retail on my books if I can help it at all. Now, here in the second volume, again, the format is the same. It gives you the contents and the issues that are in there. And again, these kind of jump around. If I look at the dates here, I see 85, 86, ending in 85. They're not all in order. But they've got some good issues. Honestly, the binding is good. The paper quality it's a little cheaper paper quality than what you would get in a nice omnibus. It's thinner, a little more of a coarse feel to it than some of the nicer books. It almost feels like newsprint, but not quite newsprint either. It's nicer than newsprint, but that's the way it feels. I think they've touched up the colors since this wasn't printed on the newsprint like it was back in the day. The colors seem to be nice. They don't pop out as much as other books I've seen, but I think they have done some touching up on the colors. Now, do you really need this? That's up to you. Do you like the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline? if you do and you wish that I could find out more of what was happening behind the scenes of the main issues, then these are the books to get. Did any of you like the Crisis on Infinite Earths series? It was one of DC's major events back in 1985. It really shook things up at the company. I used to anxiously await each issue to find out who was going to make it and who wasn't. And at one time I did have all the issues. As some of you may know, I don't collect single issues anymore. I like to collect hardcovers and omnibuses of the stories and issues that I remember and that I liked. Oh, here's the timeline again, and you will find the same timeline is in each book. It's no different. It does not change. And that is really the only extra. Now here's the newest one. Volume 3. This is the one that just came out. This one has, again, some 85 issues, a lot of issues from 1986, but the 86, 85, it jumps around. We've even got an issue here from 2000. I'm not sure why, but well, it does. I'd forgotten about Amethyst, Princess of Gemworld. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't seem to remember that series doing that well. I remember at the time DC Comics really tried to push it, but I don't think it made it. But I am nostalgic for this era. I used to like Blue Devil. It got pretty silly, but I got a kick out of it as a kid. That was a series that never made it either. But he's part of the Crisis universe, so there you go. Here's Wonder Woman number 327 from September 1985. 328. DC did go to a lot of work to try and straighten out their history and their characters, so I'll give them that. I don't know if it was all... There's one thing. I don't know if it was all worthwhile or not, because so many things have changed over the years. It seems like that I think a lot of the changes that they made have been undone over the years. And it seems like Marvel Comics have added their multiple Earths just like DC did, and I think they're running into the same problem. Different Earths, different characters. After a while it does get confusing. And then you have to do something like this to basically retcon everything into something a little more manageable. But honestly, it doesn't last. It's comics. So they're constantly having to reinvent themselves to try and attract a newer, younger audience that is not as familiar with the characters. So anyway, this is a strange decision. I wish they'd have put an omnibus. Format out for this. It will take some reading. You're going to have to jump between books. So I don't think it's ideal. It's not quite what I expected. Not unhappy with it. I'm glad to have the issues. So if you like these issues, these are good to pick up. If you're a completist, if you're not and you're just happy with the Crisis on Infinite Earths series, you could probably live without these and be okay. So thank you for watching. Appreciate your time. So until next time, I'll see you soon.